She laughed at me in front of everyone, said I should be grateful they even kept me around. The words sliced through the air like a blade wrapped in sugar. Polite on the surface, poisoned underneath. That night, I smiled through the pain. But inside, something ancient stirred. A quiet, steady fire. That was the moment I knew I had to take back control. My name is Lorraine Whitaker. I'm 67 years old, and I've learned that kindness has a breaking point. Before I tell you everything, tell me. Where are you watching from tonight? Are you somewhere warm and quiet, maybe with a cup of tea like I was that night? Good. Settle in, because this story isn't just about revenge. It's about dignity. And what happens when someone finally reclaims it. The evening started like any other. Polished cutlery, soft music, and Melissa's high laughter echoing through the dining room. She loved hosting dinners. It made her feel important. The crystal glasses weren't even theirs. I'd given them to Derek and her as a housewarming gift 5 years ago when they moved into this place. Our place, technically, but no one seemed to remember that part anymore. I was setting the last plate when Melissa breezed past me, perfume thick as her tone. "Oh, Lorraine, you really don't have to fuss," she said, her smile thin as a wire. "We know it keeps you busy, though." A few guests chuckled. One of them, a woman in a sequin dress, whispered, "She's so lucky to have you take care of everything." Melissa laughed, tossing her hair. "Lucky? She's lucky we even keep her here. Most people her age would be in a retirement home by now." The room erupted in light laughter, small, polite, nervous. I stood there, frozen with a tray of roasted vegetables in my hands. I looked at Derek, my son, hoping he'd say something. Anything. But he just lowered his head, stirring his drink, pretending not to notice. I swallowed the hurt. I'd learned long ago that dignity sometimes means silence. I smiled faintly and said, "I'm glad I can still be of help," then turned toward the kitchen before anyone could see my trembling lips. From behind the half-closed kitchen door, I heard the conversation carry on. Melissa talked about redecorating her home, about needing more space for future plans, about how some changes might be coming soon. Her voice was syrupy, but the words dripped with ownership, like I was some piece of old furniture waiting to be moved out. As I stood by the counter, the scent of rosemary and garlic rising around me, I thought about how things used to be. Before Melissa, before the dinner parties and the whispers, back when this house was filled with laughter. Real laughter. When Harold, my late husband, and I had saved every penny to buy a small home for our retirement. When Derek was a boy who'd run to me with scraped knees and wild dreams. After Harold passed, I sold that home, our home, to help Derek and Melissa with the down payment on this one. I told myself I was giving my son a better start, that family meant sharing, that love would always come back around. But love, it seemed, had a short memory in this house. After dinner, when the guests left and the laughter died, I went upstairs to my small room at the end of the hallway, the one they called the guest room. Funny how you can live somewhere for years and still be a guest. The lamp cast a soft golden light across the dresser. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Tired eyes, steady hands, and a faint smile that didn't reach my heart. I sat on the edge of the bed, the sound of Melissa's heels clacking downstairs, and whispered her words again. "You're lucky we even keep you here." Lucky. I thought about that word as I traced the lines on my palm. Was I lucky to have raised a son who forgot where he came from? Lucky to live under a roof I helped build but wasn't respected in? No. Luck had nothing to do with it. I reached over to my nightstand and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was an old wooden box with Harold's initials carved into it. Inside, among photographs and yellowed letters, lay a small brass key. The key to the safe deposit box at the bank. I hadn't opened it in years, but as I held it, something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, my shoulders straightened. I wasn't just some burden they had to keep. I was the woman who made this home possible. And if they'd forgotten that, it was time to remind them, quietly, precisely, on my own terms. I set the key down beside the lamp, its gleam soft but sure, and whispered to myself, "They'll know soon enough whose name built this house." And with that, I turned off the light. Sleep didn't come easily that night, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't mind, because I finally knew what I had to do. The morning light slid through the curtains in thin golden stripes, too soft for how heavy my heart felt. Downstairs, I could hear Melissa's voice again, crisp, confident, as if nothing had happened the night before. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers wrapped around a cold cup of tea I'd forgotten to drink. The words from the dinner echoed still. "You're lucky we even keep you here." But today, I wasn't going to cry. Today I would listen, observe, and remember. Every tone, every glance, every word that showed me who they truly were. I put on my cardigan, the old one Harold loved, with the tiny pearl buttons that always came loose, and stepped quietly into the hallway. The smell of Melissa's expensive coffee pods filled the air. She never let me touch her espresso machine. She said I might press the wrong thing. I passed by Derek's office door. It was slightly open, his voice low. "Yeah, we'll figure it out," he was saying into the phone. "Mom won't be here forever. We just need to wait it out." My breath caught. Wait it out? I stepped back, heart pounding, not wanting to hear more but unable to move. His words twisted around me like a thorned vine, gentle tone, cruel meaning. My own son, planning my absence, like it was an inconvenience to be scheduled. I went outside. The morning air was cool and damp, the grass still jeweled with dew. I stood by the flower bed, touching the wilted petals of the roses I'd planted 2 summers ago. My roses. Melissa had wanted to pull them out, said they made the yard look dated, but I'd insisted. It was one of the few things I hadn't surrendered in this house. As I knelt down to prune a dry branch, I felt Harold's memory settle beside me. That quiet strength he always carried, the kind that didn't shout, only acted. He used to say, "When people stop seeing your worth, that's when you remind them who built the ground they stand on." I smiled faintly. "You'd know what to do," I whispered. And then I realized I did too. Inside, the house was full of noise again. Melissa's laughter carried from the living room where she was chatting on speakerphone. I told Derek it's just not sustainable. She doesn't pay rent, she doesn't contribute anymore. I mean, come on. It's time we think about the future. Her tone was light, but her words stabbed deep. I paused in the doorway, pretending to dust the shelf just to listen. Her friend on the line asked something I couldn't hear, and Melissa's response came like a slap. "Oh, Lorraine, she'll probably end up moving to one of those senior apartments eventually. She doesn't realize she can't stay here forever." That's when it hit me. She truly believed she owned this house, that this was her home, and I was just a tolerated guest. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't remember what I'd signed, what I'd contributed, what my lawyer, back then, had made sure to write on every page of that contract. My name was still on the deed. I went upstairs to my room and pulled out the old trunk at the foot of my bed. Inside were photo albums, Harold's watch, Derek's childhood drawings, and a stack of envelopes bound with twine. I untied the string and spread them out on the bed. Mortgage statements, property agreements, tax forms, and there it was. Whitaker and Associates Real Estate. Co-ownership title 2018. 2 names printed in bold. Derek Whitaker, Lorraine Whitaker. Melissa's wasn't anywhere on it. I ran my fingers over the ink, tracing the letters slowly, letting their power sink in. For years, I'd forgotten what this meant. I'd let guilt, grief, and family loyalty cloud my mind. But paper doesn't forget, and signatures don't fade just because people's respect does. The kettle whistled faintly downstairs. I took my time pouring myself a cup of tea, the kind of small ritual that steadies a shaking hand. When I sat down at the kitchen table, I could almost hear Harold again. "Lorraine," he'd say, "don't let them mistake your silence for weakness. You built your life from scratch. You can do it again if you have to. I sipped my tea slowly and looked around the kitchen, at the white cabinets I painted myself, the lace curtains I hemmed, the old clock that ticked like an old friend. They saw me as old, fragile, replaceable. But I knew something they didn't. This house didn't belong to them. Not entirely. And the law and life were both about to remind them of that. I pushed my chair back, the wood legs scraping softly against the tile, and went upstairs one last time. From the back of my closet, I pulled out a worn leather handbag. Inside was an old contact card. Edna Holloway, notary and real estate consultant, retired. I hadn't seen her in years, but Edna had always said, "If you ever need to set something straight, call me." I looked at the clock, 9:42 a.m. By noon, I'd be at her door, and by evening, I'd know exactly how to take my life and my home back into my own hands. By the time I reached Edna Holloway's house, the sun had begun to push through the morning haze. The small cottage sat at the edge of town, with ivy creeping up the porch rails and a wind chime tinkling lazily above the door. Edna opened it before I could even knock twice. "Lorraine Whitaker," she said, her gray hair pinned up in the same no-nonsense bun she'd worn for decades. "Well, I'll be. You look like a woman on a mission." I smiled faintly. Maybe I am. Inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and old paper. The table was stacked with manila folders and mugs of tea that had long gone cold. It looked just like it had when I'd last come here. The day Harold and I signed the papers for Derek and Melissa's house. I placed the folded deed in front of her. "I need you to look at something," I said. "Tell me if I'm remembering right." Edna put on her glasses, adjusted them on her nose, and scanned the page. Her eyes darted back and forth, lips pursed. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "Well, you're remembering just fine. This property is listed under co-ownership. You and your son, 50-50 split." I let out a small, shaky laugh. So I wasn't losing my mind. Edna looked up, her eyes kind but sharp. "What happened?" I hesitated. "They humiliated me, in front of people. Melissa. She said I was lucky they kept me here, that I was—" I swallowed hard. "A burden." Edna reached over, covering my hand with hers. "You gave them a roof. They gave you disrespect. You don't owe them anything." "I know." My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. "But I'm not trying to hurt them. I just want them to remember." "Then remind them," she said, firmly. "Do it your way, but do it clean." I left Edna's house with a folder tucked under my arm, copies of the deed, notarized and sealed. As I stepped out into the sunlight, something inside me settled, the kind of peace that only comes when you finally see the road ahead. The drive home felt different. Every familiar turn looked new, sharper. I could feel Harold's voice again, like a whisper on the wind. "Don't let them rewrite the story, Lorraine. You know who you are." When I parked in the driveway, Melissa's SUV gleamed in the sun like it was posing for attention. I walked past it, clutching the papers tighter. Inside, the house smelled like bleach and lavender. Melissa's cleaning day. She looked up from the dining table, fake surprise plastered across her face. "Oh, you went out early. Everything okay?" "Perfectly," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Just handled a bit of paperwork." She tilted her head. "Paperwork?" "Bank stuff," I said simply, and walked past her before she could ask more. I could feel her eyes on my back, suspicious, like a cat watching a closed door. Upstairs in my room, I opened the old wooden box again and placed the deed inside. This time, I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt certainty. I spent the next few hours quietly sorting my things. Old letters, photographs, receipts. Everything I owned I organized neatly into boxes. It wasn't that I planned to leave. It was that I was preparing. When you've been underestimated long enough, preparation becomes your armor. By late afternoon, I called a local real estate office, the same one that handled the original purchase years ago. The receptionist picked up cheerfully. "Whitaker and Associates. How may I help you? I took a steady breath. This is Lorraine Whitaker. I'm calling regarding the property at 412 Elmwood Drive. Oh, yes, she replied, her voice bright. What can I do for you? I'd like to know the current market value, I said, and how quickly a sale could be arranged if one of the owners wanted out. There was a small pause, then the sound of keyboard clicks. Well, Mrs. Whitaker, the market's good right now. With your equity share, you'd have no issue listing your portion or arranging a sale under joint ownership. Could you have someone call me with the details? Of course. I'll schedule an appointment for tomorrow morning. Thank you, I said, and hung up. That night, as I sat by the window with my tea, I watched the porch light flicker on. Derek's car pulled into the driveway. I heard Melissa's laughter before she even opened the door. She didn't know that everything, the laughter, the control, the smugness, was built on ground she no longer owned entirely. I smiled to myself and opened my small notebook. Tomorrow I'd visit the realtor, then the bank, then the locksmith. I wrote one word at the top of the page in careful handwriting: remember. Because that's all this was. Not revenge, not spite. A reminder that even the quietest woman in the room can change everything with one signature. I closed the notebook, placed it on the nightstand beside Harold's picture, and whispered, "You'd be proud, love." Outside, the wind picked up. The house creaked softly, not with age, but with warning. Tomorrow, the ground would begin to shift. It had been 3 days since I'd visited the realtor, and I'd made sure to do everything quietly. No noise, no fuss, no visible ripples on the surface. Melissa thrived on noise. I'd learned that silence was how you outmaneuver people like her. So when I suggested we host a small tea gathering that weekend, she was instantly intrigued. "Another one?" she asked, her tone puzzled. "We just had guests last week." I smiled. "I know, dear. I just thought it'd be nice to return the favor. You know, invite the same folks who came before. Make it light, simple." She hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly. "You mean the same people from the dinner?" "Yes," I said sweetly. "Exactly them." Saturday afternoon arrived bathed in gentle sunlight, the kind that flatters even the ugliest moods. The house smelled of lemon cake and fresh tulips. I'd baked early that morning, the rhythm of it soothing. Flour, sugar, eggs, calm. Melissa busied herself arranging the seating, giving orders as if she were the event manager of her own little empire. Derek stayed mostly out of sight, as usual, pretending to work on his laptop in the den. But I saw the tension in his shoulders. He could sense something brewing, though he didn't yet know what. The guests trickled in. Neighbors, colleagues, one of Melissa's yoga friends. The same faces that had laughed politely at my humiliation days before. Each smile I greeted them with was steady, kind. But underneath, I was the calm before a storm. I served the tea myself. The delicate porcelain cups clinked softly against the saucers, and for a moment the room was all pleasantries and compliments. "Oh, Lorraine, your lemon cake is divine," said one of the women. Melissa smirked faintly. "She does love her baking, keeps her busy." The guests laughed again, the same shallow, practiced laughter. But this time I didn't shrink. I poured another cup and said lightly, "Busy is good, especially when things are changing soon." Melissa's hand froze mid-stir. "Changing?" "Oh, you know," I said with a small smile. "Life never stays still, does it?" A few guests chuckled, curious but polite. Melissa's eyes darted toward me, a flicker of unease breaking through her practiced grace. After everyone had had their fill of tea and gossip, I stood near the window, gazing out at the front lawn. The realtor had promised to place the "for sale" sign early Monday morning. I'd confirmed everything by phone that very morning. I turned back to the guests. "Thank you all for coming," I said warmly. "It's been so lovely to host you all in this home, while it lasts." A few confused glances shot around the room. Melissa's teacup paused halfway to her lips. "While it lasts?" she echoed. I smiled, my eyes never leaving hers. Well, nothing lasts forever, does it? The guests gave polite laughs again, assuming it was one of those old lady remarks about time and age, but Melissa knew me well enough to hear the weight behind it. Her smile faltered. "Lorraine," she said quietly once the laughter faded. "What exactly did you mean by that?" "Oh, don't worry, dear," I said softly. "You'll understand soon enough." Later that evening, after everyone had left and the house was silent again, I sat at the dining table wiping crumbs from the tablecloth. Melissa stood across from me, arms crossed. "That was odd, Lorraine," she said. "You made the whole afternoon sound like some kind of farewell." I didn't look up. Maybe it was. Her jaw tightened. "If you're planning something—" I met her eyes. "You should get some rest, Melissa. Big week ahead." She stared at me for a moment, trying to read me, then turned sharply and walked away. I could almost hear the wheels spinning in her mind, the suspicion starting to bloom. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I opened my door just a crack and saw her, Melissa, standing by the phone in the kitchen, whispering. "I don't know," she hissed into the receiver. "She said something strange today. No, I'm serious. Something about things changing. No, Derek doesn't know yet. He's useless when it comes to this stuff." Pause. "I'll look into it tomorrow. Maybe she's just losing it." I closed my door quietly, a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. The next morning, as sunlight spilled through the blinds, I sat by the window with my tea, waiting. At exactly 8:15 a.m., a white van pulled up by the curb. The realtor's assistant stepped out, hammer and stake in hand. Melissa, still in her robe, came rushing out onto the porch. "Excuse me, what's going on?" The man smiled politely. "Installing the sign, ma'am. For sale, right?" Her face drained of color. "For what?" I watched from upstairs, calm and unhurried, as the wooden post sank into the earth with 3 clean strikes. Thud, thud, thud. The man straightened the sign. White letters gleaming in the sun. For sale. The sound of Melissa's voice reached my window, high and sharp. "Wait! Who authorized this?" And in that moment, I whispered to myself, "Welcome to the beginning, dear." The scream came before the coffee finished brewing. "Lorraine!" It rattled through the hallway like thunder. Sharp, furious, desperate. Took my time pouring the coffee into my cup, added a spoon of sugar, stirred it slowly. The clink of the spoon against porcelain was the only answer she got. Melissa burst into the kitchen in her silk robe, her hair wild, eyes wide with rage. "What is that sign doing on my lawn?" "Good morning to you, too," I said softly, not looking up. "Don't you dare play dumb with me. That for sale sign? Did you do this?" I finally turned, calm as ever. "Yes." She blinked. "You what?" "I did it," I repeated. "I called the realtor last week. We're putting the house on the market." The silence that followed was almost sacred. Melissa's mouth opened, then shut again. She looked around the kitchen as if trying to find someone who could tell her this wasn't real. When she found no one, she laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You can't sell my house." "Our house," I corrected gently. "Half of it belongs to me." Her face went pale, then red. "What are you talking about? This house was bought by me and Derek." "No, dear." I reached into my cardigan pocket and slid a folded paper across the table. "You and Derek moved in. I helped buy it. My name is still on the deed." She snatched the paper, scanned it, and her expression shifted. Disbelief first, then realization, then fury. This can't be real." "Oh, it's very real," I said, "and I've been patient for far too long." Just then, Derek entered, half-dressed and bleary-eyed. "What's going on?" Melissa rounded on him. "Your mother just listed our house for sale." Derek turned to me, confused. "Mom, what is she talking about?" I gestured to the paper. "You should take a look." He did, and when his eyes hit the second page, his shoulders dropped. He looked like a man watching a tower fall in slow motion. "Mom, this is your name. You're on the deed." "I am," I said simply. "Always have been." Melissa's voice rose again, high-pitched and brittle. "This is insane. You can't just decide to sell our home." "Actually," I said, "I can. The law gives me that right. Half of this property belongs to me, and I'm done living in a house where I'm treated like a stray you took in out of pity." "You're bluffing," she spat. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I already did," I said quietly. "Ask the realtor. The listing went live this morning." Derek's face was pale. "Mom, this isn't necessary. Can we just talk about this privately?" I looked at him for a long time, seeing the boy he used to be flicker behind the man who'd stayed silent too many times. "Talk?" I said softly. "I tried that, Derek. I've been quiet, respectful, grateful, as she puts it, for years. But last week she laughed at me, in my own kitchen, told her friends I was lucky to still be kept here." "Mom, she said it in front of you," I continued. "And you said nothing." His eyes dropped to the floor. "I didn't want to make a scene." "And now," I said, standing, "the scene is made." Melissa slammed her hand against the counter. "You're cruel. You're going to ruin us." "No, dear," I said softly. "You ruined the peace in this home. I'm just restoring it, one signature at a time." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "If you think you can scare me—" "I don't need to scare you," I interrupted, voice calm but steady. "You already know what's happening. The locks will be changed in the morning. Until then, you might want to start packing the things that are actually yours." Her breath caught. "You wouldn't—" "I would," I said, "and I have." The front doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the tension. Derek hesitated, then went to answer it. Moments later, he returned with a small envelope in hand. "Mom, it's addressed to you." I opened it, unfolded the contents slowly, and laid them flat on the table. A printed copy of the online listing. 412 Elmwood Drive. Co-owner Lorraine Whitaker. Below it, the realtor's note. "Listing active as of this morning. Photographer arriving Monday." I looked up at Melissa. "You'll have visitors soon," I said quietly. "Try to be polite." She stared at me as if I'd turned to stone. I picked up my coffee, still warm, and walked to the window. Outside, the for sale sign stood proudly in the lawn, sunlight gleaming off its clean, white surface. It looked almost peaceful. Behind me, Melissa was still speaking. Angry, frantic, her words tumbling over one another. Derek tried to calm her, but I'd stopped listening, because for the first time in a long time, the house, my house, finally felt quiet. Melissa didn't come downstairs that morning. For once, the house that had always echoed with her voice, sharp, commanding, relentless, was silent. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my tea, listening to the stillness. It was the sound of change settling in. When Derek appeared, his face was pale, sleepless. "Mom," he began softly, "Melissa's upset. She says you blindsided her." I stirred my tea slowly. "Did I?" He hesitated. "She didn't mean what she said that night. You know how she gets." I looked at him, really looked at him. My son, grown, tired, worn down by his own cowardice. "I know exactly how she gets," I said, "but I also know how you stayed quiet while she did it." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. For years, my silence had protected him. Now it was his turn to face it. A knock interrupted us. Derek opened the door to find a man in a gray jacket holding a clipboard. "Morning," the man said cheerfully. "Here for the property photos." Derek's eyes darted toward me in disbelief. "Mom, today?" "Yes," I said. "The listing's already live. We might as well make it official." The man stepped inside, setting up his camera. Then came the footsteps, hurried, angry. Melissa appeared at the top of the stairs, her robe tied tight, her face pale. "What's going on?" she demanded. The photographer smiled awkwardly. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Realtor sent me." Melissa turned to me, eyes wide. "You can't sell this house. You can't just take everything from us." I met her gaze, calm, steady. "I'm not taking anything that wasn't already mine. You just forgot whose name built these walls." Her lips trembled. "You'll destroy us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm setting you free from the illusion that I was powerless." Hours later, the house went quiet again. Melissa had locked herself in the bedroom. Derek had gone out to think. I stayed in the living room, sorting through old documents, not out of spite, but to remind myself how much I'd given. Each check stub, each loan paper, each tax receipt whispered the same truth. I had built this home, and somehow I'd let them convince me I was just a guest. As I filed the papers back into the folder, I heard a soft knock at the door. Melissa stood there, her eyes swollen, her tone stripped of arrogance. "Lorraine," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I said terrible things. I was angry, scared. We're drowning in debt. Derek didn't want to tell you. We thought we could fix it." I said nothing. She kept talking, voice breaking. "You don't have to sell. Please, just give us time. I'll do better." Her words carried a pain that wasn't cruel this time, just human. I sighed. "Melissa, I don't want revenge. I want respect, and you can't buy that with apologies." She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand." "I hope you do," I said, "because the locks are being changed in the morning. Not to punish you, but to remind you whose home this is." The locksmith arrived at dawn. The sound of drills echoed through the hallway, each click sealing a chapter shut. Melissa stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. Derek hovered beside her, silent, shame written all over his face. When it was done, I handed the locksmith his payment and turned to them. "You're not being thrown out," I said gently. "But from now on, things will be different. Every door in this house opens when I say so." Melissa's voice cracked. "I never thought you'd actually do it." I smiled faintly. "Neither did you." 2 weeks later, they moved out. Quietly this time, without arguments or bitterness. Derek hugged me before he left. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I know," I said. "Build your new home on better ground." That evening, I stood by the window watching the sunset spill gold across the garden. My roses had bloomed again, stubborn and beautiful, just like me. The for sale sign still stood in the yard, but I no longer needed it. The house already belonged to me, not because of a contract, but because peace had finally returned to its walls. Sometimes people need to lose everything to remember what they were given. I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it to heal myself. And this time, the home and my heart truly belonged to me.